The only other Dragon Age game I've played was Inquisition, and I really liked it.
And there it is.
Do you want black people? Do you want black people in your game? We have a button that'll get the blacks out. If somebody was in the market for an action RPG, if this one's mediocre, which one would you suggest they play?
Buddy, how much time you got? Why don't people just eat the slop? I mean, this game's great. Like, I've never tried steak before, but like, you know, I don't get it. Like, why do people not like this game? Man, I don't know, dude. I remember my first RPG, David. I remember my first RPG. So we've got a really fun one for you guys today, tackling the core question of why Dragon Age The Veilguard didn't sell well. Recently, David Jaffe, the creator of Twisted Metal and God of War, posted a video blaming YouTubers for the failure of Dragon Age. So we're going to take a look at what he said, because in my opinion, YouTubers did not kill Dragon Age, Bioware killed Dragon Age. So let's take a look and see what David Jaffe has to say about the whole Dragon Age The Veilguard controversy.
When you say that the gaming community ruined this game's success, I mean, you know, I don't think that's entirely fair, but I think there is a lot of truth to it.
It was me.
If you're EA, you've got to kind of prepare for the market winds that you're sailing into and all that. And so they should have been prepared to counter, and they weren't. Really, at this point, all that gaming community that you're talking about has done is they've made it so they've actually made games worse, which is what they say they're trying to not do. Because they have the charismatic grifters that make the videos that for whatever reason people respond to.
Grifters. Why is
people
he cut in like
who haven't actually played a game played this game will hate it.
Why is he zoomed in?
Just because they're sort of told to hate it. And so what does EA do next time? They don't make Stellar Blade. They just continue to sort of, you know, vanilla the out of everything they work on, and make sure that no one's going to have anything to complain about. To me, that's the equivalent of saying, do you want black people? Do you want black people in your game? We have a button that'll get the blacks out. That's the equivalent of it. But if that's what you're saying, I mean, I didn't even know that's what they were asking. The only thing I've come across so far, and again, I've seen that cutscene. It's terribly written and performed, the bar thing. But the only thing I've even come across so far is when you're talking to characters, and one of your multiple options is you can romance a character who is the same sex as your character. And you can...
I don't think that's the issue with this game. I don't think that's what a lot of people are critiquing the Veilguard from. I mean, it seems like he's specifically talking about the kind of anti-woke crowd. The reality is there's a lot of avenues that you could critique the Veilguard from. I mean, all my criticism of the Veilguard is about the lore and the gameplay and the choices and how Dragon Age The Veilguard doesn't feel like a Dragon Age game.
The grifters who hate woke still streamed the game and played it to finish grifting how bad the game was. So yeah, they didn't like it, but played it for views and ad revenue equals a grift, yeah.
Oh my God. So this is one of the things that gets talked about all the time. It's like a catch-22. If you don't play the game, then you can't criticize it because you didn't finish it. But if you finish the game or play through the whole game, well, then you must have liked it. If you're critical of a game, you can't win. I typically will play through full games, even if I dislike them, so that I can speak accurately on what the game is. And I can say, you know, I can sort of deflect the criticism of, oh, well, you rushed through the game, you didn't see everything. It's like, if I played all the side quests, and I played through all the game, and I played it multiple times to see all the different endings, then I've seen the whole game, and I can critique the whole game. That's the point of making content on video games and critiquing video games, is you have to experience the game fully, or as fully as you can, to critique it and talk about the pros and cons of it.
I get that you would look at this game and say, well, this doesn't seem like a Game of the Year contender, and it may not be.
It's not.
It probably isn't for most people. But I've been playing this now on stream for a little over an hour. Are you seriously looking at this and going, this looks like utter shit and it's crap?
Yeah, kind of.
Like, I mean, really? I mean, that's okay. It's your opinion. That's fine. But
I mean, I don't know. The Veilguard's combat, it's just very mid. It's mediocre to me. I think one of the big issues with the combat in this game is the sponginess of the enemies. So it takes forever to kill these mobs, but they don't really pose that much of a threat to you as a player. So it's not like interesting gameplay. It's not engaging gameplay. You just kind of spam the same abilities, rotate through your abilities, wait for the cooldowns to come off. It's not like super engaging like you would get in an Elden Ring or a Dragon's Dogma 2. And I think that's one of the issues with Dragon Age switching to an action combat system as opposed to their old school real-time with pause system, is that Bioware just didn't make a stellar action RPG experience with the Veilguard.
Now, by the way, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am curious, Nick, when you say you think it looks mediocre. So what, if somebody was in the market for an action RPG, not Baldur's Gate, not a turn-based RPG, like an action game, like, you know, like what you're seeing here, but there's still stats and a big story and characters and a party to build and all that. If this one's mediocre, which one would you suggest they play?
Buddy, how much time you got? Let's see. We've got Dragon's Dogma 2, Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Ghost of Tsushima, Hogwarts Legacy. I mean, Greedfall. I could go on and on. This is one of the most like mediocre action RPGs out there today. So there's a ton of games out there. I really wonder, like, how many RPGs has this guy played? I think we maybe have detected a filthy casual here. I truly wonder, because it's just like, man, if you think that this is like the top of the heap for what's out there in the market right now, like, have you played other action RPGs that have come out in the last 5 years or so? Because if you have, I really would wonder what's going on if you think this is sort of the peak of what's out there right now.
Like, which one does it really well that is still relatively modern enough that would still scratch that
Dragon's
itch?
Dogma 2.
I mean, Elden Ring doesn't do that. Elden Ring's my favorite game of all time, but Elden Ring's not this. Elden Ring doesn't have anywhere near close to this kind of combat.
Okay, I could see where he's coming from, because Elden Ring and the Souls-like games, they are a little bit different from this type of action RPG. So I could give him that, but at the same time, I would much prefer playing Elden Ring over Dragon Age The Veilguard. But if you did want a more story-driven experience, I could see, you know, playing something like The Veilguard. But if you were more story-oriented, I'd play the earlier Dragon Age games.
That's like comparing, you know, a fine, you know, whatever, 3-star meal, I don't know how they do meals, to like a really solid, slightly above McDonald's dinner. It's like they both have places in your life.
Why don't people just eat the slop? I mean, this game's great. Like, I've never tried steak before, but like, you know, I don't get it. Like, why do people not like this game? Are you looking at it? Like, how could you say this is mid or bad? Man, I don't know, dude. I remember my first RPG, David. I remember my first RPG. I feel like this guy just doesn't have a lot of experience playing RPGs. I mean, he's been in the games industry. He's made more like action games like Twisted Metal and God of War. I don't get the impression that he's played a lot of RPGs or action RPGs, so it just seems like his point of reference with the Veilguard just really isn't there. So David ended up making a follow-up video to this one, sort of clarifying his points a little bit more, because he did get a lot of feedback and, let's say, pushback on his initial video. So let's take a look at the follow-up.
Well, hope you had a good Thanksgiving if you celebrate. I did sit down after our stuff we did today and read some of the comments on my last video, which seems to have upset some people, which is fine. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things for what it's worth. Number one, I was responding to somebody in the chat asking, did I think that the social media grifter types had harmed and been the cause of Dragon Age Veilguard not doing that well at sales? And so I was responding to a direct question, and my answer is, though, yeah, I think they contributed.
Okay, you could talk about the contribution, and sure, like, obviously, content creators have an impact on the market. People follow content creators, they take opinions from content creators, they watch content creators they agree with, but I disagree that YouTubers are the ones who caused this game to fail. Could they have had an impact on sales, a downward pressure on sales? Sure, but like, what percentage is that going to be? Like 2%, 5%? Because ultimately, a good game that reaches a market is going to do well. You could have removed all of the negative content about the Veilguard. It's not like the game would have sold 10 million copies if Asmongold and myself and Wolfheart FPS and the anti-woke crowd were making content on the Veilguard talking about how bad the game was, it's not like the game would have sold 10 million copies, bro. Let's take this from the other angle. So what about the people, grifting, saying the game was amazing? Like, what about the IGNs and the Eurogamers? I mean, Eurogamer put out a review for Dragon Age The Veilguard, giving the game a 10 out of 10. The reviewer called it the best Bioware game I have ever played. What about all of the pre-release videos that were hyping this game up? I mean, that didn't pump the sales higher. So I think the reality is YouTubers didn't kill Dragon Age. BioWare killed Dragon Age by making a mediocre, subpar game that wasn't appealing to people. If the combat in the game was better, if the writing was better, if the overall presentation of the game was better, this game would have sold really well. And I think we can look at some opposite examples as well. Look at Black Myth Wukong. And similarly with Hogwarts Legacy, there was this massive boycott campaign on social media that went nowhere. That game was one of the most successful single-player RPGs of all time, and one of the highest concurrent player counts on Steam on release. YouTubers and content creators can have somewhat of an impact on the success or failure of a video game, but they're more a representation of what people are thinking in general. Because if content creators are doing really well with their content, let's say they're making positive content around a game and they're doing really well, that kind of is a reflection that the overall audience for the game is receiving it well. On the flip side, if content creators who are making negative content around a game are doing really well, that's kind of a reflection that the audience is receiving it negatively. And I think that's more of what's happening with the Veilguard. Now, again, content creators can influence somewhat, but it's not like this game would have sold massively better if YouTubers were not making videos critiquing or criticizing the game. So I just disagree with him fundamentally on this point.
I think that the people who have not played the game and think that if they tune into a certain streamer that I would call grifter, I do know what grift means, by the way, but I'll address that in a moment. If they tune into certain streamers or Twitter people or whatever,
who could he possibly
there are people that are selling a narrative that, as someone who has played 22 hours of the game, I don't think that narrative is there, that this is some, you can't take 2 steps forward in the game without hearing about some kind of LGBT quote agenda or propaganda. I mean, I'm 22 hours in. I really haven't, there's nothing in there. There are things in there like that if you search for them, and there may be things coming up where you can't avoid them if you wish you could avoid them. But for 22 hours, I haven't really seen anything other than you can romance if you choose, or at least you can try to. I haven't tried, so I don't know what the response would be. Same-sex characters as your main character.
I really wish he would speak about specifically who he's talking about, because, again, a lot of the criticism about this game isn't even about, like, woke stuff. It's about the actual gameplay and the storytelling and the choices and all of those sorts of things. That's where a lot of the criticism for the Veilguard is coming from, and I think ultimately that's why the game failed, because it failed on a multitude of factors of gameplay, presentation, storytelling, lore, etc., that made the game unappealing to a broader audience. And for people who've played the Dragon Age games before, there's always been same-sex relationships. Even going back to Origins, that was possible. That's not what people are upset about.
But I do want to clarify, though, 2 things that I do think, and I've talked about this numerous times since I've started playing the game on different videos, but it wasn't included in any meaningful way in that video. So I do want to address 2 things. Number one, the only other Dragon Age game I've played was Inquisition, and I really liked it.
And there it is. Oh my God. So this guy hasn't even played Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2. He doesn't have the frame of reference of how the series has changed over time. Oh my God, dude. Oh my God.
Too many people have opinions on things they know nothing about. And the more ignorant they are, the more opinions they have.
I'll say this. You don't have to play the earlier games to make an opinion on Dragon Age The Veilguard. Like, you could just play The Veilguard and have an opinion on it. However, if you haven't played the other games in the series, except for Inquisition in this guy's case, you don't even have the frame of reference of how this series has evolved over time and what changes have been made and what things have been thrown into the garbage can. That's the big issue. So again, oh my God. Again, we've detected the filthy casual. I'm going to pull out my RPG elitist card here and say, I don't think this guy knows what the fuck he's talking about when it comes to the Veilguard.
Didn't finish it. Obviously won Game of the Year 2013, 2014.
And he didn't finish Inquisition even. So he probably didn't play Trespasser, so he probably doesn't even know about like Solus's story leading up to the Veilguard or like how this story was even set up.
And this game is very different, obviously, in art style and tone. And when I mentioned it, a lot
Very
of more
different from-
hardcore Dragon Age
Very different from Origins too, the game you didn't play.
fans are like, oh, that's kind of what they do. Dragon Age Origins, different than 2 different than Inquisition. You know, so I assume that was like when we did Twisted Metal 2, which was totally cartoony, and then we went to Twisted Metal Black, which was totally M-rated. Maybe it's like that's just what they do. But I get that if you came to Dragon Age Veilguard and you were expecting, either because EA had marketed it initially in some way and then they kind of feel like they're pulling the wool over your eyes, I don't know. But regardless, if you came to the game and you felt, I thought we were getting a Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, dark fantasy, super serious thing, that is clearly not what this is. So I'm like, yeah, I've never had a problem if somebody's saying, I don't like the game because of that. I mean, they can say whatever they want. They have a right to hate it for all kinds of reasons. There's too much purple in it. I don't care. But I'm just saying that that is, I think, from people who have spent time with the game, you're like, oh, well, there's no doubt it's a different tonality.
True.
The other thing is the writing. Even in the video, a lot of people were critical to me or of me about, I say the barf scene and the push-up scene, even though I agree with the messaging of what they're trying to communicate, terribly written, really cringy and stupid. The overall game, I like the writing of the narrative. I like that you've got this, what's his name? The elf guy who is kind of a god who's lived.
Solus, say his name. Bro, if you would have played through all of Inquisition and the Trespasser DLC, you would know this. But again, you know, this is a guy who just is not familiar with the Dragon Age series and like not understanding why people are actually critiquing this game and upset about this game and why this game failed. The game failed because it's a massive departure from the earlier games in the series. It's cast aside a lot of the things that people loved about the Dragon Age series as a whole. It went to chase this mass market with a more watered down product and changing to an action combat system because BioWare thought, hey, you know, this is going to be more mass market than Real Time with Pause. But at the same time, they didn't make a strong action RPG experience that could stand out in a crowded market of action RPGs. These are the reasons it failed. BioWare is the reason this game failed, not because of YouTubers critiquing the game. So there you have it. What do you think of David Jaffe's opinions on the Veilguard or my thoughts on it in this video? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more Dragon Age and RPG videos. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.